Hello and welcome back to this week's edition of Penn State Sports Night. I'm Dylan Huberman.
And I'm Taylor Brennan. We're going to start off with talking about the NFL. So Dylan, do you think it's time for the Texans to panic with Brock Osweiler?
I do. They signed him to a 4-year, $72 million contract. He has 9 touchdowns opposed to 12 turnovers. I don't think you can do that when you're being paid that much money. I don't think that works.
What about the Packers, 4-3? What do you think's next for them?
I mean, the Packers' biggest worry has got to be the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are going to be 6-1 if they can beat the Bears tonight, and that would put them up 2 games on the Packers. And with Aaron Rodgers struggling the way he has been lately, especially coming off of a 1-point loss to the Falcons this past Sunday, I think there's a lot of questions over there in Green Bay.
I agree. So Jaguars, firing their offensive coordinator, Greg Olsen. Do you think it's time to worry about Bortles with them being 2-5?
I do. I know Bortles this week is seeing Adam Dadaw, who is a very good mechanics coach who's worked with Tom Brady. He's also worked with Drew Brees. I think Blake Bortles needs to figure out what's going on. He's holding the ball too long, and he's getting a lot of balls tipped and intercepted, and you cannot do that to go and succeed in this league.
I agree. So MVP discussion. Give me 4 names.
4 names. Let's see. I'm going to go with Tom Brady, David Johnson, Matt Ryan, and I think Derek Carr is in a place in this conversation. I think Tom Brady has 12 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That's pretty much flawless. If he has no picks, he's got to be in there. You look at David Johnson, 4.5 yards per carry, 8 rushing touchdowns. Although he has not gotten into the end zone yet, that is an issue. Matt Ryan, 19 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Also amazing. Julio Jones has been on the receiving end of a bunch of those touchdowns. And then, of course, a big question mark now. Derek Carr, the quarterback of the Oakland Raiders. This past Sunday against the Buccaneers, 503 yards and 4 touchdowns. Look out, NFL.
So quarterback situation in Dallas. Dak, Romo, what are you thinking?
I think Dak. I mean, the team is 6-1. They're on top of the division. They're in the top 5 teams in the NFL. Who do you think they would make a quarterback change for? I wouldn't put in some Hall of Famers right now. You have a 6-1 football team, a guy who can run, throw, barely turns the ball over, even though he had 1 interception last night. I think he's just too good to be benched.
So you think Romo's legacy at the Cowboys is over?
I wouldn't say it's over. I mean, having Romo on the sidelines has taught Dak a lot. I think he may have a career on another team. There are a lot of quarterback-needy teams in the NFL. If you look at the Browns, look at the Jets, and as you were talking about Blake Bortles and the Jaguars, if he doesn't keep his act together, he could be out. You never know. There's a lot of things are changing over here.
Definitely. A lot of new faces in the NFL.
Yeah. So now let's move on to Penn State football. Taylor, tell me about this weekend's win at Purdue.
So Penn State won a 62-24 game over Purdue. 17-17 going into the half, tight game, but an 81-yard touchdown run by Saquon Barkley was able to secure the win. So next week we have Iowa at Penn State. I'm thinking it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a whiteout game. We are always strong with our whiteouts, so look out, Iowa.
Yeah, big game here, especially for Franklin, who's now cemented his legacy, I think, after beating that ranked Ohio State here. Now, the big question, and a lot of fans want to know, Penn State, are they bowl-worthy now in the top 20?
I definitely think so. I think Penn State has really shown that they're a team to be reckoned with. I think Saquon Barkley is a shining star. I think Franklin has really fired up the team. I think we're going to win out the rest of the season against Indiana, Rutgers, Michigan State. So definitely, I'm thinking a really good bowl is in our future.
I can't wait to see. It's the first time Penn State's won a ranked football game since 2011. Well, now I can tell you that all the freshmen, seniors, sophomores, and juniors at Penn State and all their parents and all the fans around the country have something to be excited about. What do you think?
Definitely. I know that Penn State has a bright future, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Same here.
Welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Brendan Pfeiffer, joined by Mike Marcantonini, and tonight we're here to discuss some baseball. And after a thrilling Game 5 of the World Series between the Cubs and the Indians, it has been forced to a Game 6. And Mike, what are your thoughts on Game 6? What are you feeling?
Well, it's going back to Cleveland, and it was obviously the Cubs. It was huge for them to keep the series going and take it back to Cleveland. I think that this is going to be a really good game. I think we're going to see another close game, 3-2 Cubs win in Game 5. I think we're going to see another close game. You got Jake Arrieta on the mound for the Cubs. He won Game 2 of the series in Cleveland as well. Gave him a good start in that game. Josh Tomlin going on the mound for the Indians. He pitched well in his Game 3 start. Just, exited early. Didn't give up any earned runs, though. So I think we're going to see a good pitching matchup. And I think it's going to come down to the bullpens.
Okay, and for each team, like you said, what do you think are some of the keys for Cubs and the Indians?
Well, I think the biggest key for the Cubs is for Arrieta to have a strong start. He needs to go 7 innings, and they need to get as much out of him as they can so the middle relief doesn't have to do a ton of work and they can get the ball to Chapman. If Arrieta can go 7 innings and Chapman can pitch 2 and the Cubs can win in 9, that's the ideal scenario. But if Arrieta can't go 7 or 8, look for Mike Montgomery, the left-hander out of the bullpen, to be a huge key for the Cubs and get them to Chapman and be that bridge to Chapman at the end of the game. Okay. And then for the Indians, I look at just the fact that you have to get an early lead. If they get an early lead behind Josh Tomlin in Game 6, it makes it so much easier for them to go to Andrew Miller in the middle innings and then Cody Allen late in the game to close it out. And if that's the case, they're winning the World Series because that bullpen has been dominant.
I was about to say, who do you got winning the whole thing?
I think it ultimately comes down to a Game 7. I think the Cubs take Game 6 behind Arrieta, and I think the offense comes to life. But I ultimately, in Game 7, think it comes down to the Indians pitching, specifically Corey Kluber. He's been dynamite all postseason. He's been fantastic in the World Series, being asked to go Game 1, 4, and, of course, a potential Game 7 he's going to go. He's 2-0 with an 0.75 ERA this World Series. 15 strikeouts and only 1 walk in 12 innings. He's been absolute dynamite for them. So I think with him on the mound in Game 7, it's the Indians' game to lose.
All right. And who do you have as the MVP of the series?
Well, I think, like I just said, the fact that Kluber's been so dominant in the series, I think it ultimately comes down to him. If he pitches a solid Game 7, doesn't even need to get the win. If he pitches solid and puts them in a position to win, I think he gets it. But if it's not Corey Kluber, I look at Francisco Lindor, the young shortstop from Puerto Rico for this team. 8 for 19 so far in 5 World Series games. That's a .421 batting average, a .476 on-base percentage, and 2 RBIs. He's been phenomenal for this team. He continues to hit in big situations. He's coming up clutch. I think it's one of those 2 guys. But I ultimately think if it goes to Game 7, it's going to be Kluber because I think he's going to dominate that game.
I'm Mike Forster, and this is Alyssa Devine. And tonight on PSN TV, we'll be discussing hockey, both in the NCAA and the NHL.
Yep.
So on the same night that Penn State football beat Ohio State, a little known fact, Penn State men's hockey beat number 3 ranked Notre Dame in a split between the 2 games that they had. Their first game, they tied.
Yep.
Went to overtime, tie game, and then the second game went to overtime again, and were able to come up with the win.
Yeah, so obviously a huge win for Penn State football, beating the number 2 Ohio State team, but you got to look at this hockey team and what they've been through. They're just growing and they're getting so much better. They're so much more dynamic this year.
Absolutely.
So much depth, and they beat the number 3 ranked Notre Dame. They're now ranked number 14. Notre Dame dropped to, number 5, Mike?
So Notre Dame this game actually was number 3 and dropped only 1 spot to number 4, which is interesting. But the really big story is that Penn State going from unranked to number 14 is just crazy. They jumped a lot of spots on the list. And then following this series, they had a rough start against the Canisius team. The Daily Collegian reported that in the first game, sophomore defenseman Kevin Kerr of Canisius thought that the puck hit both posts without crossing the line, and said that Dennis Smirnov of Penn State originally wasn't even sure if he scored too.
Yeah, well, in the first game, I think they actually had a better game. In the first game, they had 60 shots on goal, which is just unbelievable. Canisius only had 20 goals, but based off of how many goals they only had 4 goals. But I mean, they came out, they got the job done. They won both games like they were supposed to. They had Sturtz scoring again. He's their most dynamic offensive player, and then they had some freshmen doing their thing too. Biro and Smirnov getting those goals. So I think Gagodowski should be happy with this game, and I think they should. They'll be fine with the weeks coming up.
Absolutely. And in the end, the momentum would carry them through both games, letting Penn State win 4-1 in their first game and 4-2 in their second game. Moving on to NHL tonight. So far, the standings are shaping out pretty similar to last year's postseason, with a few real big standouts. On top of that, right now, is the Edmonton Oilers. They're currently the top of this Pacific Division and number 2 in the entire league. What do you think about that?
Well, you know what? I didn't expect them to come out this strong. I know they have Connor McDavid, obviously one of the best players in the NHL, if not the best. I mean, he's not a rookie. He had his rookie year last year, but I mean, just an unbelievable player. But then they also traded Yakupov, so they lost him. They have Cam Talbot in net, who's a pretty good goaltender for them, but I really wasn't expecting them, because of the competition that they have in the West, I wasn't expecting them to come out on top so soon.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest acquisitions they had to go along with McDavid was Milan Lucic. Absolutely.
Well, he's a physical guy.
He's a physical grinder. Yeah. He gets down in the corners, he works it, and he really knows how to come up with assists. Right now, Milan Lucic with 7 points on the season and also a +7. And
but
Connor
I think
McDavid,
they did pay him too much, though.
Absolutely. I mean, They really wanted him on this team to help accent, I think, McDavid as a goal scorer.
But, I mean, they either have to get in the playoffs this year with the amount of money they paid him, or get something going in these next couple of years. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Connor McDavid right now with 5 goals and 7 assists at a +8.
Yeah.
And Lucic at a +7. It really just kind of speaks volumes to the way they're playing together and why Edmonton has really taken the top spot in the Pacific Division. And right now, one of the biggest stories in the NHL, coming out of Hockey Fights Cancer Month, Craig Anderson's wife was actually diagnosed with cancer, and in his following game gets his first shutout of his season, which is just so big. What an emotional game. You know, even got 3rd star that night for the game.
I mean, he deserves it. I mean, like, coming back after taking that break because his wife is diagnosed with cancer, and the fact that it was Cancer Month for hockey in the NHL, and then it comes back with that shutout. It's just so deserving, and it speaks volumes to how much dedication these players have and how much emotion helps. I mean, the Rangers, when they had that playoff run, and when St. Louis, when his mom passed away, I think that's really what took them to the Stanley Cup final. And then you have Craig Anderson, his wife, getting diagnosed with cancer. I mean, that's huge, and I think that emotion really helped him get that shutout.
Absolutely. And this game even coming against the #1 in the Pacific Oilers, really with some deadly, deadly shooters. They had some really, really close calls, a lot of big saves.
Shutting out Connor McDavid, it's hard to do.
It's hard to do. It's hard to do. And, you know, what's really happening that was unseen in the Western Conference completely, a lot of teams like Anaheim, Los Angeles, Dallas, and even Nashville that were seen as some of the best teams in the West are at the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, I mean, all of these teams, I think, besides LA, made the playoffs last year, and they were the toughest teams, especially Dallas last year and Anaheim. They had a rough start last year, but they came out on top again in the West, and you know, it speaks volumes to these younger teams getting more experience. We have Calgary now doing well, Winnipeg, even Vancouver playing well. So,
absolutely,
you know, it's going to be interesting to see if these younger teams and these teams that haven't made the playoffs can maybe make a run for it this year.
So. Yeah, actually, all of those teams all made the playoffs, and you know, really leaving the door open for these new teams. Other big news, Crosby coming back off an injury. He scored 2 goals against the Flyers with the help of Malkin in overtime, really sealed the deal. It was a close game, but the Penguins had it.
Just the fact that the captain, Crosby, comes back after a concussion. Maybe some fans were worried, but he comes back, gets those 2 goals. Shouldn't be worried. I mean, it's the same old Crosby. And the Penguins, they're returning pretty much the same exact team that they won the Cup with, besides Ben Lovejoy, who was sent to another team because they couldn't keep him. But, I mean, this Penguins team, they're dangerous again this year, too.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Looking forward, really the biggest game is going to be McDavid versus Matthews. McDavid on the Oilers, top of the Pacific. Matthews currently sitting at the bottom with Toronto, but you never know. Matthews coming out with 4 goals in his very first ever NHL game. You never know what might happen.
Yeah, so Connor McDavid last year was the #1 draft pick. This year, Austin Matthews, #1 draft pick. Both 2 incredible players, so it's going to be interesting to see both teams, you know, they have these 2 top players. I don't think they have that much depth, so it's going to be interesting to see these 2 players show off against each other. And personally, I think the Oilers will take this one, but it'll still be a good matchup.
Yep, I believe I have the Oilers winning 2-1.
Yeah.
You know, let Matthews get his day of glory, but I think the Oilers take it. And that's all we have tonight for Hockey Night.
Mike Marcantonini here alongside Brendan Pfeiffer and Jack Hurst. We're going to get into some NBA talk on the program now. Guys, let's get into some predictions for the season. We'll start off with you, Brendan, your MVP pick for this year.
I mean, how can I not go with Russell Westbrook? Let's face it, he is a different man when Kevin Durant is not on this team. Without KD, over the course of his last 8 seasons, he's averaged 28, 7, and 8. And with those numbers that he's putting up, those are MVP numbers. No one can compete with that. He has his own team. He's a walking triple-double, and I don't see how he doesn't win MVP.
Jack, who's your guy?
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with that here. Russell Westbrook is one of the best players in the NBA, and now he has the Thunder to himself. He's no longer a second fiddle. But I'm gonna go with Anthony Davis because it is his time to shine. He is a freak athletically. He can shoot from outside he can shoot from outside the perimeter, and now he is the only guy on that team. He's got himself and himself. That is the only place that ball is going to. He scored 95 points in the first 2 games of this season, and that's the most ever for anybody. And he put up an unheard of stat line with 7 blocks in the first game as well. He is clearly the season's MVP through the first season, and now he's got Tim Frazier feeding him the ball, Penn State alum.
Okay, Russ and AD, 2 good picks right there. How about the Rookie of the Years? Brandon, we'll start with you in this one.
I'm going to go with Joel Embiid. He's missed 2 years, and he's known as the process. Philadelphia's put all their trust in him, and basically they have nobody else. I mean, who else are you going to give the ball to? Like Jared Bayless? Like, are you kidding me? That's blasphemous. Like, Joel Embiid, MVP Rookie of the Year, no question. He had 20 and 7 his first game, put up stellar numbers. That was just in 22 minutes of play. And Philly's patience, it's really going to pay off. And like I said, they have no one else to get the ball to. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and he's going to have the chance to make plays, and I think he'll do that. So that's my pick.
Jack, you agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. JoJo, the process, whatever you want to call him, it is his time. He has been waiting 2 years to finally play in this league, and now he's got his chance. And until Ben Simmons come back, he is the only mouth to feed on that offense in the starters, with the exception of whenever Jahlil Okafor comes off the bench, and they're not going to play together, according to Brett Brown, until their minutes restrictions are over. But he has also grown 2 inches since he was drafted. He's now 7'2". That's pretty hard to stop. And once Simmons does come back, that's going to be some awfully nice to watch pick and rolls with the 2 of them. And if Joel Embiid is not the Rookie of the Year, it will definitely be on the Sixers, as it could be Dario Saric or Ben Simmons as well.
Okay, both going with big Joel Embiid there. All right, the last one for the night, NBA Finals picks.
We're going to get a trilogy, guys. Cavs, Warriors, 3rd year in a row.
3.
Yeah, it's going to be as good as the Godfather trilogy. I'm telling you that right now. But I do have the Warriors winning it in 6. I know when you get these super teams together, sometimes it takes a while to gel. Like, people have to get used to sharing the ball, things like that. But by the time the playoffs roll around and they're playing for the finals, they're going to have gelled. They're going to know how to play together. They're going to mesh. I got the Warriors in 6. Simply just too much firepower. Curry, Thompson, Durant, not to mention Draymond and Iguodala off the bench. I just don't think the Cavs can compete with that, and I'm only giving the Cavs 6 games just out of respect for LeBron and what he does. But Warriors in 6, game over. That's just what's going to happen.
Jack, who's your pick?
Well, it is a changing of the guard in the NBA.
Okay.
I do not see the same teams coming out of the West and the East. I see Pelicans Sixers.
Okay. All right.
No, I'm just kidding. The
thought
Cavs
so.
are going to repeat as the Eastern Conference champions, but I think the Spurs are gonna outlast the Warriors this season. Just for one thing, the Warriors, they have 4 mouths to feed in that offense. There's gonna be really hard for them to develop chemistry. We saw the Heat, the first LeBron Heat team, took a long time to really gel together. And yes, they did make the playoffs, but the East is a lot less difficult than the West is currently. And the Spurs looked awful good. I mean, Greg Popovich, he can just turn in almost any guy off the street into a 20-point scorer. I just see them coming out of the East, but I see LeBron prevailing in the end, and the Cavs picking up their second straight championship and doing it for the land.
Okay, well, good stuff, guys. We'll see what happens at the end of the season. For Jack Hurst and Brendan Pfeiffer, I'm Mike Marcantonini. Thanks for joining us on Penn State Sports Night this week. Come back next week for another show.